Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm very excited to be speaking to you here in this session on sustainable production. And maybe I should start with a question. Should we even try to make ornamental horticulture more sustainable? I mean, why bother? For the last decades, we have been doing so much on energy, on IPM, using biocontrol measures, changing our substrates, changing our growing media. And we have been doing so much, and growers have really adopted all sustainable techniques in a large majority of production areas. And still, we get the message from Brussels, it's not quite enough. And every time we get the message, it's not quite enough, growers can get frustrated because in their companies, they really want to improve their companies, they want to advance their companies, and there is some degree of frustration. And it's not so much that growers do not want to improve, it's more a matter that growers really need consistency, really need legal certainty, we heard it here today before, and they want to make changes that have an impact. And most of all, growers want to make changes that also have an economic return because they are businesses, they want to make an economic return in what they do. And therefore, it's really important that in all the discussions we work together with growers, stakeholders, policymakers to actually ensure that we have progress, that we have an ambitious progress, but at a practical pace for each grower, for the industry as a whole. And that's very important. And I will talk to you about how we do things in Flanders, because 90% of ornamental production is actually in Flanders, in Belgium, in the region of Flanders. And I will talk to you about how we have a unique environment for research and development in Flanders, and then I will present some cases on sustainability. Now, Flanders is a top region for growers, and we have a unique research environment in Flanders, and that actually benefits the growers if they want to innovate, if they want to have more sustainability. We have a very close collaboration in the technology pool for ornamental plants in academia, the University of Ghent, ILVO, who brings all these very bright ideas from academia more to an applied level, the Institute for Agriculture and Fisheries, that is. Then we have the University College of Ghent, who works on education, try to educate the next generation of growers. And then we have Vivaverda, which is my research center, and Vivaverda is actually a very practical research center working together with growers and translating all the knowledge from these other institutes towards the growers. And basically what we do, we have a very unique interaction with the sector, with sector organizations like AVBS, who is our host here today, Boerenbond, and we involve growers in a lot of committees, in a lot of steering groups of projects, so that we know what lives in these companies, in this industry. And we work together closely with all our financiers, but also with policymakers at the bottom. And that's either at the European, a Flanders, or a provincial level, but we try to change the way they perceive what legislation should be, to keep it as practical as possible. And so having this engagement with all these stakeholders puts us quite at the center. And tomorrow you will visit this site. This is Vivaverda in Destelberge. In the program there's a picture from our other site which is dedicated to vegetable growing and potato growing. But this is clearly ornamental plants, cover crops in ornamentals, cut flowers, potted plants, tree nursery. You will see all that tomorrow. And we do practical research, extension, and I will give you some cases where we worked on that we think are very important to work on in sustainability. And the first is, of course, IPM and biocontrol. We have, for the past decades, seen a huge increase in the use of biocontrol measures throughout the ornamental horticulture. And we have biocontrol that really works very well. There's also a number of control things that, pests and diseases that we still need to develop good biocontrol. We do trials with biostimulants, we do trials with various other aspects. But one thing we have learned is that the main problem we actually have in using biocontrol is that you need to have a good idea of which pests you have and where they are at what stage in your company, which pests, which diseases. And so monitoring is something that we really worked on the last couple of years to learn growers how to monitor properly. And one example I give you is broad mite control, and it's just a graph, but if we saw that biocontrol wasn't really working because we were always too late. And then we found out that the biology of the animal, we detected the level of infection from damage on the plants. And if you infect some plants, the blue plants here in the middle, and then you count broad mites on these plants and all the plants in a circle around them, this first circle being the red plants and then the green plants, you saw that by the time you had visual damage on the blue plants, you really had almost no broad mites anymore, and they had moved throughout the plants. So we were always late. And so we developed novel detection techniques so that they could see them before the damage occurred and treat them with biocontrol before the damage controlled. And this helped growers in azalea very much forward. And this was the start of research and monitoring, and now we are working very much together with our partner Ilvo on the development of novel detection, camera detection, using, and Johan van Uylenbroek will be talking on AI later on, but also using LED traps to actually improve detection. This is some graphs I present just of trips detection, and you see that if you use a green LED panel with some UVA attached, you have a very much higher, and you see that at the top left graph, a very much higher capture of trips than you have with just a green normal sticky trap or with a yellow sticky trap. You also see that the color is important because on the right-hand graph, if you have a blue LED light, it doesn't work as well as a green LED light. And also because energy is important, we look at can we use it, do we have to use it for 24 hours a day, or can we use it just during daytime? If you just use it during daytime, you get a lot of, just as much capture as if you use it for 24 hours. That's the lower graph. So basically, we've been working on monitoring and improving monitoring as the basis of IPM, and that's a very important step to reduce the use of pesticides, to implement your biocontrol better, and by doing this, to improve your crops. A second point I want to make, a second case I want to present is growing media. We heard the discussion just before the break, and basically it is a high-level discussion whether what is more sustainable, what is not more sustainable, but our growers are adapting to using a broader variety of substrates from different origins, mixtures, and so on. The only thing that we see is that we really have to help growers to use the right substrate, because not all substrates are suitable for all plants. And this poses a problem for ornamental growers that have a wide variety of crops on their farm. And so they really have to make choices of using the right one. And so we can help them with that, doing that in research. Just some graph that we tested, and I'm not going into details which kind of mixtures they are, but peat-reduced mixtures. And you see that in the plant height on the left, the fresh weight in the middle, or the root score on the right, you see a high variability in these products. And you can reduce peat and still have a good quality, but in some cases, the quality goes down. And so you have to find the right mixture, the right substrate composition for your plants, and that's very important. Because also this substrate composition not only affects your plant growth, it will also affect the need for irrigation, how much water you have to give, the shrinking in the pot, nitrogen leaching, which is also a very important issue, because in Flanders we cannot have nitrogen leaving our growing area. We have to make sure that the nitrogen stays on the growing area, so we cannot have leaching. So it's a challenge for growers with a large variety of plants that we need to address in research and in extension. My third example is water use, and the last 5 years, as you all know, we had 1 extremely wet year and 4 extremely dry years, and we saw that there is really a need for water use and irrigation, because if you plant in full soil-grown ornamentals like trees, nursery, if you plant in the soil and there's no rain coming, you will have a lot of difficulties with your crop. And what we actually could show is 2 things. Is first of all, trees stop using water way before all the water is gone in the soil. They will stop, and by just having a little bit of irrigation. And this is a complicated graph, but just in the green bars is rain, the blue bars is irrigation, the orange line is trees without irrigation, the water transport in trees without irrigation, and the blue line is the water transport in plants with irrigation. And you see actually that there is, whenever you irrigate, there is a huge increase, much more than what you give as water, in water transport in the plant. So they start accessing the last bits of water that were still in the soil even better when you irrigate. And this is important knowledge, that you know that you don't have to give all the water the plant needs, you just need to trigger the plant. And what we also saw is that what normal growers would give as irrigation, and this is the, here again, the orange is no irrigation, the blue bars are 100% normal irrigation, and the gray bars are a 50% reduction in the amount of water we give. Then we see that we can actually, we don't need as much water as we really think we need, just to trigger the plants into growing a good stem diameter. And the values here are stem diameter in Carpinus betelus. So we actually have a good growth even with little use of water. And that's important because water is a scarce commodity, and not all open air, open field growers can actually grow or actually access irrigation water easily. A fourth case I want to show is just, and you will see it tomorrow, is the high-tech growing. I mean, greenhouses have been highly specialized. We save energy with screens. We have LED lights to steer the plants, not only, but also to save energy. We can control all the parameters of the growth. But we are taking this even one step further, and you can visit it tomorrow, in our multi-layer growing systems, where we try to increase even the level of smart greenhouse technologies, because growing without daylight and just under lights, you can control the environment, you can recirculate not just the water of the ebb and flood tables, but also the water that's actually evaporating from the plants, and you can recirculate that. You can fully control your environment and keep pests out to a larger extent than in a normal greenhouse, control the climate better. It comes at a cost, because it's a very costly way of growing, but in a high-value plant such as ornamental plants, this can be worthwhile. So increasing technologies, you need to adapt your monitoring, you need to adapt your pest control monitoring, because you can't reach all the plants anymore, and you have to rely a lot more on automatization. So this is what we are going to in the future. Just to end my talk, I want to discuss the importance of all that we do as a practical research center. And it's very important that we collaborate with various partners and stakeholders, especially the growers, but also other research centers, international research centers, even in other crops, and we try to build very strong relationships with them all. Strong relationships that are very important to have with the sector, and we have a very good relationship, and I think meet can agree to that with AIPH, and it's very important to know what lives in the sector. We have a very good relationship with all the government agencies that are either funding or making policy, which is also important because we're not always on the same line between growers and policymakers, but the exchange of viewpoints helps making things more practical. And we can support this as a research center with data to actually help making policy more practical and more useful for growers. And that's a very important issue. We try to communicate as a research center in various ways. We do things on paper, in booklets, in leaflets, brochures. We also have a lot of communication online, and because every grower has its own wish in communication, and you can't get around that. If you do just one way, you don't reach them all. So that's important. But what's even more important, we work with the growers. They are very much involved in the research we do, and that makes that they are committed. And commitment drives peers. It's a way to actually engage the pioneers. They are easy to engage. You have pioneer growers, and many of them are here also today, that are always advancing, always innovating, and that's easy. But you have to have the majority of growers. You have to take them and lead them in the way. And then you have some laggers that you really have to pull very hard to get them along. That's the way we do it. And then to conclude, I have, for companies, the advice, innovation is essential as an ornamental horticultural company. Innovation is essential to build a future. And if you innovate, you have to innovate to improve your company, but just keep an eye in all innovation on your impact reduction. If you reduce your impact, then you are going sustainable, but in a way that is beneficial for your company, because you innovate to make more out of your product, out of your plants. But when you do so, always pay attention to what lives in society. We don't always agree as a grower what lives in society. You either agree or you don't agree, but it's important because politicians listen to society, and sometimes you can already guess what's coming a long time beforehand. And then for the sector as a whole, it's very important that any transition, people always talk about sustainability, have great ideas, but any transition should be evidence-based. Look at research. We are losing chemical products very fast now, and we have not always a good biological biocontrol alternative at the moment to actually tackle the pest. Let us develop that first in research. There's good companies who are doing research on that, and let us solve the problem first before we lose something else. And sometimes that's a difference in speed sometimes, but we need a good evidence-based transition. Invest in a good, lean and optimized research environment. We are very lucky in Flanders that we have such a thing. I'm not sure if it's in some other countries the same case. And invest in communication and commitments towards sector. Engage with your growers. And I think that's, for research it's very important, but also as an industry, engage with researchers, because we can only do what you ask us to do, because that's the way to move forward. Thank you very much.